Hardy har, it's me again, the Bargain Pirate, and welcome to another adventures in game chasing! Yarr! So, I went over to the EB Games because, well, that's GameStop for us Canadians, and, well, I wanted a PlayStation Classic. It came out early December, it was about $120, $130, and I was like, maybe I should get one. So I arrive and lo and behold, a whole bunch of them, almost half price. It's like if Sony completely misfired with the thing or something. Anyways, I got the PlayStation Classic, and honestly, I'm kind of happy with it, considering I paid about almost half the price of its original thing, only a month after it came out. Sony's misfire is my game, you know what I'm saying? I mean, brap. I'm the pirate, yar! This comes with 20 games. Some of the games that are not included are a lot of things like Tony Hawk, Gran Turismo, some choices like Twisted Metal 1 instead of Twisted Metal 2, I would have put the second one in. A lot of the reasons actually are because of music copyrights. Like, for example, the Tony Hawk games are full of good music, like Superman, the Offspring song, a bunch of stuff like that. You couldn't, Sony didn't want to repay for the copyrights, so they're not on there, which explains the somewhat lackluster, and some of the decisions are a little head-scratchy, like no Final Fantasy Tactics, but Revelations Persona, which is really not as good as Persona 3 and up. Other things like that, well, Tekken 3 is the best Tekken on PlayStation 1, sure, but Battle Arena to Shinden, they could have put a second one, Twisted Metal, they could have put a second one. They could have had another Final Fantasy as well as Final Fantasy 7. We could have had 7 and 8 or 7 and 9, something like that. There is a bit of a lack of actual, like, what we would call classic. There's about 7 or 8 really good games, and the rest are, like, somewhat filler, somewhat, like, upper tier games.
The PlayStation Classic was released on December 3rd, 2018, on the 24th anniversary of the original release, with 2 replica PlayStation controllers, and an HDMI cable, a USB micro 8, a standard USB-A cable, but no AC adapter. And you can just plug the PlayStation Classic into your PlayStation 4's USB slot in order to power it up, so really it's not that big a deal. Now on to the games! One of the launch titles of the original PlayStation, this is a very run-of-the-mill fighter, even at the time. Slow-paced, lacking flair, the second or third game might have been better choices, but as it is interesting to see one of the earliest PlayStation games on here, but it's not very fun to actually play. Honestly, I would have chosen something like Guys, especially with all the Final Fantasy VII guest characters. Now that's something people would have liked a lot. It's a pretty fun game in a fun series, which kind of became obsolete the second the SSX series started existing. This is one of those spend 20 minutes in the menus and 2 minutes in the actual game kind of games, and it is a fine choice, it's okay. I mean, the third and fourth one were just basically like updated versions of this. Honestly, Cool Borders 2 out of the series is probably the best choice. This game to me always felt like a Diet Coke version of other games. You have the OK Racing, which a lot of other games did a lot better, or the OK Car Demolition mode, which Carmageddon beats it at, so you're left with the game on the okay side of generic. I know Sony loves giving this and the original Twisted Metal for free a lot, like when you could download it after collecting icons on PlayStation Home a few years back, so it's not like I haven't had the chance to replay this since the 90s. A Wipeout game would have kicked ass here. Final Fantasy VII. Here's an example of a game I absolutely loved as a kid, but feel has really aged poorly compared to some of the other entries in the series. I still love the presentation and graphics, but all those damn mini-games every 10 minutes really slows down the experience for me, even with the cheat buttons that make things go faster and make you unkillable. This game takes its sweet time before landing us out in the open world as well, which, fair enough, but it's really slow during a replay, and this is something people complain a lot in Final Fantasy XIII, and this game does that too, except maybe slightly less long. Anyways, the characters and story still get me though, and the music is noteworthy, and it's still an overall amazing experience. This has its place on here, and it is truly a PlayStation classic. The original Grand Theft Auto from DMA Designs, which were known at the time for making the Lemmings games, was later renamed Rockstar, and it's okay. It's not a game changer, it really did not age well. It's really very basic and has worse tank controls than Resident Evil, which makes that game feel like a tight action game, but you can still catch glimpses of things to come. Another case of, I would have put the sequel on there instead. Probably the most Japanese game in this entire collection. This obtuse puzzler takes a little while to understand, but ends up being very challenging yet very fun instead. Still, this is a really weird choice for this collection. Something more popular like Parappa the Rapper would have been good. An odd title, but a fun one regardless. You are a rabbit in a mech suit, or a robot rabbit, or something, I can't really tell, and you must collect keys to access the next level, and so on, in order to fight each section's boss, who are part of a giant squid army ship holding onto our planet. Gotta love the Japanese sometimes. I remember liking this one a lot with its at the time rare first-person view for a console game, and fun visuals. One of the best examples of bringing a 2D series into the 3D era, the original Metal Gear Solid blew everyone away when it came out, and apart from a now kind of weird control scheme, the game still holds up pretty well for a 20-plus-year-old game. Full of weird, unique moments, insane characters, little quirks that are simply brilliant and logical in the game's context, this is one game that truly deserves to be called a PlayStation classic. Unfortunately, there's not much to be done about the Psycho Mantis fight, though. Classic arcade action from Namco, which, while not the most popular or obvious choice for a PlayStation classic game, it is still a pretty good game. The controls are tight, the gameplay is frantic, but honestly, this would have been more at home on the Dreamcast Classic had that console ever been made. A truly particular experience, this game has tons of attitude and flair and is one of my favorite games on the system, with a lot of unique design and gameplay choices. A great addition to this lineup. The game that put Ubisoft on the map. This is a charming, if hard-as-hell classic platformer, and as such, be prepared to die over and over. Some of the platforming suffers from some hitbox fuckery, but none more than other platformers of the era. It's a very challenging game, but it is very good looking. A solid racing experience with a jazzy, smooth soundtrack, tight controls, and a lot of replayability. This is a solid choice, and while Gran Turismo is more synonymous with PlayStation, this is a much more fun arcade experience. Did I say I love the soundtrack of this? The original Resident Evil is a game that seemingly came out of nowhere, after Capcom wanted to remake Sweet Home, a previous horror RPG game based on a film of the same name, or vice versa. It's actually pretty muddy. Did the game come first, or did the movie come first? Anyways, Shinji Mikami was hired based on his work on Goof Troop, the engine of which was the basis of this game's engine. Here is the Director's Cut Dual Shock Edition, which gives us the use of the Dual Shock controller, as well as a more fair auto-aim when balanced difficulty at the cost of the original soundtrack for a new one. Isn't that just great? Another case where the vastly superior sequel would have been a better choice, but unlike others in this list, the original Resident Evil is still a classic choice. Here is an extremely weird choice. Sure, Persona has been a popular series since the PlayStation 2 era, but the first two games are anything but classic. They feature a lot of elements from the Shin Megami Tensei series, sure, but are super clunky, unintuitive, and playing them now is as jarring as playing the original NES Final Fantasy, for example. Xenogears would have been a better choice here. Of all of the Capcom Street Fighter games, this is the last one you'd expect in a compilation of PlayStation classics. I honestly would have put Street Fighter Alpha 3 here and called it a day, or, if you really need a puzzle game in there, Lemmings or Bust-A-Move would have been cool here. It's a fun enough game, but honestly I'm still scratching my head as to its inclusion here. A pretty fun series. This one was really well received at the time, but in my opinion has really aged poorly. The story is all over the place and the enemies respawn so fast that there's no time to get used to the controls properly or to figure out where to go. Not my favorite one on here. If you're gonna have a fighting game on this console, you really can't go wrong with a Tekken game, especially this one, which is the best, most advanced game in the series so far on the system. A ton of characters to unlock, some delightfully cheesy ending scenes, just an overall fun game. One of the most baffling choices here, the original Rainbow Six is directly based on the novels from Tom Clancy, following the books pretty closely. This is one of those games that takes a bit of time just understanding how to play and where to go. You spend a lot more time in the menus than you would want to, and this is a really meh choice for this collection. Maybe Ghost in the Shell or a Medal of Honor game? I don't know. Everything this game is, the sequel is so much better at. It would have been the more natural choice for inclusion as a classic, but since this is the one on here, might as well enjoy a tight, responsive, kinetic, and crazy fun experience in vehicular combat. One of my favorite games of all time. An RPG with a larger focus on firearms, this one is a pretty solid game and could be rightly considered a classic. Like most JRPGs, expect to sink an average of 50 to 70 hours in this bad boy. So this console is the same in the PAL and North American territories. However, in Japan, some of the games were swapped, and here are some of the games that were only on the Japanese release. Arc the Lad, Arc the Lad 2, Armored Core, G. Darius, Gradius Gaiden, Parasite Eve, Saga Frontier, and Psy. Now, a lot of these games would have been really good on here. I don't see why they could have just not included them as well and we could have like 28 PlayStation classics. Why not? Are they still on the console? That's up for debate. Similarly, some hackers found other games that were on there. Here's a picture with all the games that have some code on the PlayStation Classic but are not playable, at least not at the moment.
Anyways, if you can get this at a discount, honestly, if you like the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, this is in the same vein, and I have a special attachment to my PlayStation 1, it being the first console that was actually mine. My first console was a NES that my uncle gave me, but it was his NES. The first console I ever got, for me, was my original PlayStation 1, and there it is, right here. This is my PlayStation 1 from 1996. Came out in 1995, I got it a bit later than when it came out. I remember, I had Domino's, the big square pizzas in the 90s, and then my parents surprised me with a PlayStation, and lo and behold, I got this, I got Crash Bandicoot, Twisted Metal, the best birthday ever. All the birthdays I've had since kind of sucked. I'm disappointed in you, family members and current girlfriend. You could do better. You could do like my 1996 birthday. So anyways, the PlayStation Classic, I say get it, if you can get it at a discount. It's not worth over $100, but it is a very fun thing to have for half that. I love having those games in HDs. There's some features that are interesting, like the quick saves and stuff, but there's only one per game. And the loading times are a lot faster than they were in the original things. Anyways, that's all for the PlayStation Classic. I hope you enjoyed my reviews of the games individually, and I'll see you next week on another exciting, super fun-filled episode of Adventures in Game Chasing. Yarr!